My cheating ex-wife's life fell apart after leaving me for her affair partner. Now, my family is pushing me to meet her, hear her out, and even consider taking her back. Posted by you/amazing_ol. I get it, you're probably thinking this sounds like the plot of a Hallmark Christmas movie. And honestly, I wouldn't believe it myself if it hadn't actually happened to me. But here I am. If you can't believe it, just play along and give me advice anyway. Because I promise, I'm a real person. I'm a 32-year-old man, and I first met Sarah, now 30, back when we were just kids in grade school in a small town. She was my first everything, my first girlfriend, my first love, and eventually my wife. We both went off to college together, and after I graduated, we tied the knot. I was 23 and she was 21 at the time. While Sarah finished her degree, I worked hard to support both of us. And when she landed her first job, I couldn't have been prouder. It felt like all the sacrifices we'd made together were paying off, and I truly believed we were building a strong future. For the next 2 years, everything seemed perfect, or so I thought. Then, out of nowhere, I came home one day to find her packing a bag. She sat me down and dropped a bombshell. She'd been having an affair with a coworker. I had no clue. She was crying, apologizing, and saying she still loved me, but that she'd fallen in love with this other man. She claimed they shared a deep connection and chemistry she'd never felt with me. Despite her apologies and apparent guilt, she left that very night to move in with him. Sarah made the divorce process as easy as possible. She didn't contest anything and barely took anything with her. In our state, divorces without kids can be finalized in just 10 days, so we filed the paperwork ourselves since neither of us could afford a lawyer. After everything was finalized, she asked if we could stay friends. I'm ashamed to admit that I broke down completely in front of her, sobbing uncontrollably. I didn't say anything, I just left. She was 23 and I was 25 at the time. A couple of years later, in early 2020, I was back in my hometown riding out the pandemic. One day, my mom casually mentioned that Sarah had married the man she left me for. Apparently, our parents, who'd always been close, had been talking about it. Sarah's parents were hesitant about her decision but ultimately supported her. Hearing that news was like ripping open an old wound. I'd been doing my best to move on, but finding out she'd married him brought everything rushing back. I told my mom, as kindly as I could, that I didn't want to hear about Sarah anymore. She understood and never brought her up again. At first, I was completely broken and deeply depressed, but I eventually sought help. I started seeing a therapist, got on some medication, and focused on rebuilding my life. I earned certifications and, thanks to a college friend, scored an interview with a global consulting firm. My friend couldn't handle the job's extensive travel requirements due to his family, so he strongly recommended me for the role. I threw myself into work, traveling constantly and pouring all my energy into my job. At first, my life was just work, gym, and virtual therapy sessions at odd hours. Over time, I got into incredible shape from running and lifting weights. Eventually, I landed a long-term project in Romania, where I was able to meet new people and form relationships. Fast forward a few years, and I recently decided to take some time off. I had saved up several weeks of vacation and planned to spend Christmas in Reykjavik, Iceland. But first, I went to my parents' house for Thanksgiving with my brother and sister. Last Thursday, I was at the local independent drugstore in my hometown. It's an old-fashioned place with a lunch counter, so I grabbed a cup of coffee and sat down to enjoy it. Out of nowhere, Sarah walked in, sat down beside me and said hello. She looked nervous, her face was flushed, and she was fidgeting. I was stunned. I just sat there staring at her, trying to keep calm on the outside while internally, I was about to explode. She was still beautiful, maybe even more so than before. Her baby face was gone, and she looked fit and confident. She immediately started apologizing for how she had ended our marriage. I told her she'd already apologized 100 times back when she left me, but she insisted. She admitted she'd been young and stupid, and over time, she'd realized just how much she had hurt me. She asked if we could meet later in a quieter, more private place, away from prying eyes, small-town life, you know? I shook my head and told her honestly that I didn't see the point. What could I possibly gain from meeting her again? That seemed to deflate her. She admitted it was probably more for her own benefit than mine. She said meeting with her might give me closure, not just about the way things ended, but about the kind of person she used to be. She wanted to explain how she'd changed, what she'd learned about herself, and what real love meant to her now. She wanted to show me that the person she is today is someone I could respect, and maybe even be friends with. I didn't want to drag it out any longer, so I told her I'd think about it and left. She gave me her number before I left, and I went home. By the time I got there, it turned out my mom and sister had already heard the news from Sarah's mom. Apparently, I'm now the unwitting protagonist of some ridiculous Hallmark Christmas movie scenario. My sister, 29F, and mom, 55F, told me they'd kept in touch with Sarah over the years since our divorce. According to them, she'd changed and deserved a chance to explain herself. My dad, 56M, however, just shook his head and walked away, clearly unimpressed. My brother, 22M, on the other hand, thought the whole situation was hilarious. When I asked him for his opinion, he shrugged and said that since Sarah and I had been close since childhood, I should at least hear her out for the sake of keeping peace between our families. Living in a small town, I couldn't deny he had a point. Her family might feel slighted if I refused to speak with her. I know for a fact she's living with her parents again, so it's obvious her life has completely fallen apart. Part of me is morbidly curious to learn all the messy details, maybe as a form of schadenfreude. But at the same time, I feel like it would just leave me feeling sad. I guess I'm a better version of myself now. More mature, fitter, and wealthier than I was when we were together. But deep down, I'm still the same guy she claimed to have no chemistry or connection with back then. Whatever she says now, I'm pretty sure it'll just be meaningless platitudes. Honestly, she strikes me as a dragon cosplaying as a princess, looking for someone to be her white knight. No thanks. My mom and sister, however, are pushing hard for me to meet with her. Mom's worried that if I don't at least listen to Sarah, her own friendship with Sarah's mom might take a hit, making her social life more difficult. Let me make this clear. I have absolutely no intention of getting back together with Sarah. Sure, she's still gorgeous, but so are the women I've met in Romania, Iceland, and beyond. And none of them broke my heart. If anything, I'm only considering meeting with her to hear what happened after she left me, and to smooth things over for my family. What do you think, Reddit? Should I go? Part of me wants someone to talk me out of it. Update 11 days later. Hi, it seems I've officially become the Hallmark Christmas movie guy. I'm writing this update from Reykjavik, Iceland, where I'm spending Christmas with some friends I made during consulting projects here. This time of year, the days are incredibly short, and the northern lights are visible. Unfortunately, the weather's been rainy and cloudy lately, so it doesn't look like I'll get to see the aurora borealis this trip. Still, Reykjavik is a fantastic place to be during the holidays, very friendly to singles. We're doing a Christmas pub crawl and other fun stuff. Anyway, back to the story. After my post, my mom and sister wouldn't stop pestering me about meeting with Sarah. Eventually, just to shut them up, I gave in. But I made it clear, very clear, that I wasn't interested in getting back together with her. I was also annoyed they even thought there was a chance I'd reconcile with someone who tore my heart to pieces. I finally agreed to meet Sarah at the playground of our old school. It's a small town, so there's only one school, serving kindergarten through 12th grade. When we met, I told her up front that I was only there as a favor to our parents and my sister. She acknowledged that and started with some small talk. She mentioned she'd been following me on social media. I've since made it private. She brought up how much I'd traveled and even commented on my girlfriend from Romania. I told her her name was Monica and that we'd had a great time together. Then, she got into the juicy details I'd been curious about. Unfortunately, the story wasn't all that juicy, just standard relationship drama. She said that living with the guy she left me for made it clear that their forbidden spark had disappeared. It wasn't long before their affair turned into just another boring relationship. She admitted she realized the spark was gone the first time she had to wash his skid-marked underwear. Yep, she threw me away for a guy who couldn't even manage basic hygiene. Still, she doubled down and married him because she couldn't face the idea that she'd thrown me away for someone unworthy. Sarah's stubbornness kicked in, but their marriage didn't last long. He was a smooth talker who made good commission money, but he was terrible at managing finances. They constantly fought about money and chores, and eventually, she caught him cheating with a coworker. Oh, the irony. By the time she left him, her credit score was wrecked, and she was pregnant with his child. She ended up getting an abortion, something no one in either of our families knows about. Now, she's back living with her parents and working at the same feed store as her dad. She said she wanted to reconnect because we'd been best friends for 17 years, and she missed me. She talked about how much therapy she'd been through and how she was a completely different person now. She claimed the girl I used to be best friends with was still inside her and gave me some spiel about how much she cared about me. I couldn't even listen to that manipulative garbage anymore. I told her I'd changed too. When I get burned, I don't touch the fire again. I told her it was great that she'd worked on herself, but the benefits of her growth would have to go to some new guy. I told her that when I look at her, all I see is the woman who stabbed me in the heart and left me bleeding. There's no way I'd ever be her white knight. I wished her luck and said I hoped she'd keep up the changes she'd made. Then, I casually mentioned I was leaving for Iceland for Christmas. Yeah, I was bragging. She was trying not to cry, and I pretended not to notice. When I got home, Dad was disappointed I'd caved to my mom and sister. He said I'd failed some test of manhood. My brother called me an *** hole, so naturally, I had to wrestle him. He got me in a headlock. I guess I held back too much. The next day, I left for Iceland. I'm staying here through the new year, and then I'm heading to Budapest for a follow-up project. Sarah's not invited.